outside of Felicity, who's now back in third. Intensify and Rupert's Promise. Then comes Elusive Melody, and Zenyatta is closing nicely in the center of the track. Caramel Coffee has the lead, but you better take a look at Zenyatta to run by and do it nicely. Caramel Coffee left in second. Zenyatta.
Hello, it's Bob Pandolfo. Welcome to Power Pace with Pandy and Morning Maidens. And today is Friday, October 11th, but I'm going to talk about races on Saturday. I have two horses on Saturday that are in maiden races that I like, and go over the reasons why I like those horses. And I'm going to go back to yesterday, the Thursday at Belmont at Aqueduct, to show you a horse that I picked that I think is just a good handicapping example. But let's go over to Saturday's 10th race. Now, hopefully they'll race. They didn't race on Friday. They had a technical problem at the track. But this is the 10th race on Saturday. Now, this is a 6-furlong New York bred $40,000 maiden claiming race on the outer turf course. And the horse I like is Top of the Table, who's the 4 horse, and she's a filly. Let me just get this narrowed down here a little bit. Okay, it's a little glitchy here. All right, here we go. So she's a filly, and you could see that she started out, it was a sloppy track, and she was very green. Look how far back she was in her debut. She came on, though, as you could see, she ducked in at the break. That happens sometimes when they have post 1 in their debut. She just got a little confused, but she came on really good. So it looked like she had some potential. Then she ran well in her next start, and she finished second and missed to a horse who came back and won. Then she caught a muddy track, and I really think the muddy track hurt her, and she didn't fire in this race. Now, this is a horse that's bred for turf. If I was the trainer, I probably would have put her on turf right away, maybe in the second lifetime start. But they gave her a few starts because she did show some promise in her debut on dirt. Her first start on turf, she had post 10, as you see here. Now, this is the inner turf course at Saratoga. Now, the turf courses at Saratoga are tight. The turns are tight, especially the inner course. So when you get an outside post, it's tough, because you have to really, you're going to be caught wide if you try to leave the gate. And if you don't leave the gate, you're going to be caught wide in the last turn. And a lot of horses get caught wide both turns. So you could see that she left. She was 4 to 3 wide on the first turn. She pressed the pace real hard early. And you could see she had a 97 first quarter on the pace figures, on these Brisnet past performance pace figures. Her E1 was 97. And you could see that on these calls here. This tells you how fast it was compared to like average. So the first call was plus 15, which is very fast. And the whole pace was fast. And you could see that the second call, she's only a length behind. And she only lost by 4.5 lengths. Then they bring her back at Saratoga. This was the short meet in June. Then they bring her back for the regular meet at the end of August. And she gets post 11 this time. Again, very tough. And this time, she can't really, she doesn't get out of the gate as well. Maybe Johnny Velasquez, wanted to try something different. Or maybe, there were a lot of horses that left. But this was a better field, too. Now, how do you know that? Now if you do some research, you can look at the horses, you'll find that out. But look at the odds. Here's a horse who raced pretty well, and she comes back, and she goes off at 42 to 1. So you notice here she's 4 to 1. Well, 9 to 2. 9 to 2. No. Yeah, 9 to 2. And here she's 12 to 1. And here she's 42 3/4 to 1. So what that means is that was a good field. There were horses in there that people were betting, and because they had good figures, and they were very good contenders. Whenever you see the odds like that or the high, it's a good field. And that's very high for a horse that really was actually, it only raced 4 times and had 2 good efforts, and only 2 efforts that weren't good were on off tracks. So now they bring her back. Her works are steady since last. She shows the 4 breezes, and they're dropping it for a tag. and they're cutting back into a sprint. And there's good speed in this pedigree. Now, this is a good turf pedigree. They only show 104 here, but I think that's because Flame Away probably hasn't been, a sire that long. I don't know. This is a good turf pedigree. I looked it up. I mean, this on the Flame Away side here, this traces back to the Mr. Prospector line, and there's plenty of turf horses there. Even a Danzig in there somewhere, and then on this side, the Kitten's Joy line is Northern Dancer. I mean, it's a very good, strong turf influence line. A lot of good turf. It's saddled as well. So, and also if you look here, Flame Away is 15% on turf, and Kitten's Joy is 13% on turf. So those are good numbers. There's a lot of turf horses. Turf statistics on these turf sires tend to be lower than dirt sires because the turf races tend to have more horses. Like you see here, 12 horses, 11 horses. They tend to put bigger fields in the turf races, so that lowers the percentage. So you have sometimes outstanding turf sires that will win, say 15%. That's good. That's very, very good. So this is a good turf pedigree. And now they're dropping in for the tag. So, this is the spot for this horse. The horse to beat is probably the one horse who's 6-5 in the morning line. This filly Splashy, top turf barn, missed by a nose at this level last time, but beatable. I picked it. What was the whole? Anyway, I'll tell you in a second. 419. I took 419 in the 10th race. And I think this is a spot for her. She's got enough speed in the pedigree. She's got a good turf pedigree. She drops down. She gets a much better post. She's in a weaker field. This was a tough field. She's in a significantly weaker field. Now she gets a jockey who's not going to take that much money probably. So that's probably good. But he's winning at 12%. The reason why they couldn't get like Johnny Velasquez or one of the jockeys that's been riding her is that Keeneland is open, and there's a lot of good racing tomorrow. There's good racing tomorrow also at Laurel. So some of the jockeys, they're out of town, so that's what happens. The other horse I like tomorrow in these maiden races is in the 11th race, another turf race. This is 2-year-olds going 1 mile and 1/16. Pretty wide open race, I guess, but there's a Colton here by McKinsey. Now McKinsey is a first crop sire, so he hasn't really done much on turf yet, but he probably should. I mean, there's no reason why he shouldn't be a good sire. In fact, let's look up the pedigree here. Let me just go to pedigree. We'll do a quick look on this horse, Dragoneer. All right, so here you see Dragoneer. Now you see here's McKinsey again. He's right now he's for first crop sires. I believe he's 3rd in the country for the new sires. So in other words, in total earnings for 2-year-old sires who just started their careers as sires, and this is their first crop, he's 3rd in the country. Could be 4th, but I'm pretty sure I checked it was 3rd. So he's got really good earnings so far. So he's doing well as a sire. And here you see, Street Sense, Street Cry. This is pretty solid, all around, turf on the his sire's side, and then of course on the dam side you have the great, Northern Dancer line again with Sadler's Wells, and then this is good turf influence. So it's a good turf pedigree, and this 2-year-old sold for $450,000. And, it's a good pedigree, but the reason why this horse sold for $450,000 is the workout. He ran a furlong in 9.4 seconds at the sale. And I watched that, and you could see he's very quick. So what happened in his debut at Saratoga, he broke slow, and it kind of took him a while to get going, and then he ran into some traffic. He was coming up on horses, then he had to go outside, and then he had to try to find room in the stretch. But he was really moving well. And the final time is a little misleading because it was a wet turf course. But he was coming on. He gained a lot of ground. I like that Carmouche rides him back. Good barn, having a good meet. Second time out, he's 20%. He's good on, Danny Gargan's very good on turf, 18%. Good work since last. He's coming back at the same type of race, a mile and a 16th. I think this is a 2-year-old that can run. It is, it's pretty wide open. I mean, there aren't any obvious standouts though. And my guess is that he's 4-1 in the morning line. My guess is he's going to go off the favorite, but we'll see. But I think Dragonair is going to run a good race there. Now I want to look at another race, and this is from Thursday. I've been hot lately. If you look at my website, I put up some, recent winners that I had. In fact, here's the recent winners page. I didn't update this yet on Thursday, but here, on Saturday, October 5th, I had 6 winners on top, and a lot of good payoffs. And then on Thursday, October 3rd, I had 4 winners on top, and they paid $11, $10.80, $7.60. Best bets, doing well. So I've been on a pretty good roll. And then Thursday, I had a nice day, and both of my best bets won. And one of them was this horse, Brisbane. And I wanted to show you this because now this is an interesting little handicapping angle that comes with experience. A lot of people will be familiar with this, I think. Some people may not. It's just something, it just goes to show you my mindset. I'm sure other people look at it this way too. So this was a 1-mile turf race, right? I looked at the race, and right away, the first thing that jumped out to me is it looked like Venetia, the Chad Brown filly, is probably the horse to beat. She had raced well in all 3 of her starts, and then she came back, her first start of the year and only her 4th lifetime start, and she made up a ton of ground, as you can see here. Now Ortiz isn't good. Is going to is at Keeneland, or so he wasn't here again. This meet, some of the jockeys aren't here right now because of the Keeneland meet. So then I see there's another Chad Brown horse. Now this is another horse coming in from France. Now Venetia came in from France too, as you can see, came in last year, right? She came in last year from she raced at Chantilly, and then you see this one. Chad Brown has this horse, this filly, another 4-year-old. Brisbane, coming in from France, but hasn't raced since April. So you're talking about like a 1.5-year layoff, right? And it's funny, years ago when I first started betting horses and handicapping, it was around 1971. And, in the 70s when I was betting horses, you didn't bet horses that came off a 1.5-year layoff. I mean, you just did. In fact, you didn't even bet horses if they hadn't raced in 6-7 months. A lot of years ago, the horses raced more often than they do now. Like now, you'll have a lot of horses that won't even race 10 times a year, whereas years ago you had quite a few horses would race 16, 17, 20 times a year. You still have horses that do that, but I'm talking about like on average. The averages for the amount of races per start has really dropped. So the trainers tend to bring their horses back. You can't waste races. Years ago they'd bring them back. They really weren't sharp, so they used to say, well, give them a race, so they'd race and they'd finish, maybe 3rd or 4th. Then the second time out, they'd be pretty much ready. But then by the 3rd time out, they'd really be ready. Now, a lot of them are ready right away as soon as they come off a layoff. It doesn't even make any difference sometimes how long the layoff is because they know these horses aren't going to race that much. And now, and of course, it has something to do with the trainer. Now, Chad Brown is the top turf trainer in New York and I would say pretty much the country. I mean, I don't have this year's statistics in front of me, but I mean, Chad Brown, he's probably the leading turf trainer in the sport now for a number of years. And of course, there are a lot of good turf trainers in New York who race there regularly, like Christopher Clement and Bill Mott. But Chad Brown, is consistently a high percentage winner on turf. So he gets this filly. Now, obviously, she has something wrong with her, right? We don't really know what it is, but he put a long foundation of work. So look at, and you can see she's working out all through July, all through August, September, and then into October. There are no gaps. So what do you know? Well, you know she's sound. So whatever was wrong with her, she's healed. Because otherwise, there's no way you could train her every week like that, right? And the thing is, you have to understand too, with somebody like a Chad Brown, this is a high, an expensive, like very well-run operation where they have good horses, and they spare no expense. So this is not, it's not just like the only time she gets exercise is for these workouts. She's going to be jogging during that layoff, that year and a half layoff where she was injured or whatever was wrong with her. They may have had her, she was probably going through a rehab, right? So just like the professional athletes do. Now they may have had her swimming, right, to keep her muscle tone and keep her strength. They have these pools where the horses swim. A trainer like a Chad Brown is going to have, every option. He's going to have everything at his disposal because he's got, he's a big outfit, and he's charging a lot of money to people, these owners to who want to use him. To get that kind of top tier service, so he has those advantages. So he can bring a horse back after a year and a half, right? So, but that's not the only reason why I like this horse. So I checked back. It's a little more difficult to research the French horses, but I typed the name in, and I found whatever I could find about these horses, and you could see this horse ran in good races. She finished second in neck here. Then she wins on synthetic. But here she finishes third. And I looked up these horses. Kenley is a nice filly, and Galicio had come back to one. And here again, she wins this race. This is on the synthetic, but again, it's a key race. You can see these two horses win. And I looked them up, and these horses continue to do well after that. So once I looked at that, I did a little research and said, okay, she faced good horses over there. Even though the purses aren't that high, and don't forget these were, younger horses. Here she's only 2 years old in these first two races. So these were horses that were just starting out and turned out to be pretty good horses. But the other thing is, and this is the final kicker, Chad Brown uses Ortiz Jr. as his number one rider, and his number two rider is Flavien Prat. And they both get pretty much the best horses he has, right now, the last year or so especially. He was using Ortiz mainly, and then, Prat came into town and came, to start riding in New York, and he started using him more and more. So both of those guys, they have a lot of wins for Brown, but they're not here, right? So when they're not here, he uses Manny Franco, right? But look at this. So he has these two fillies in this race who both look like probably the best fillies in the race. But Franco doesn't take this one, right? Now notice that he had his top jockey Ortiz on this, but Ortiz isn't in here now. And this horse is second off a layoff, and raced against better horses than the one horse. Right? Raced in a Grade 2 stakes race. You would think that Franco would take this horse, right? But his agent took the one horse instead. All right? So what does that tell you? His agent thinks the one is better. Right? His agent likes the one. Right? He probably saw, the agents, Manny Franco is going to have a really good agent. I mean, he's a top jockey. He probably saw the workouts. Maybe he talked to Chad Brown. What do you think? Blah blah blah. And and they talked it over and said, "This is the one. All right, this is the one you want." Getting LASIK's the first time. So they ran 1-2. Brisbane won and paid $15. And the exacta paid good. I hit the exacta. So I only played two. I played Brisbane to win, and I boxed a 1-2. And Brisbane paid $15. I think the exacta was like $28 or something like that. With the other horse went off favorite. So, in my opinion, they should have been like each of these two should have been like 2-1, because again, if Benicia, who looked the best in the race, was the best, Franco would have been on her. Right? If you go through this whole card, Franco was on all the Chad Brown horses, and he's first call when the other two guys are out of town, so he obviously, he thought this was the right one, and getting LASIK's nice $15 horse on a horse that probably should have been like 2-1, You know, so these are the little things you kind of learn. That's experience. You know, it doesn't always work out. And look, Venetia ran well and could have won. You know, but that was the tipping point for me. I liked her for Spain even before that, because I thought that she raced against good horses there, and I knew that Chad Brown would have her ready, and I knew she was going to be sound. She was getting Lasix for the first time, and she already, you know, she had 2 wins in 4 starts, even though they're both on synthetic. She has a great turf pedigree, so I wasn't really concerned about, you know, that she won on synthetic and not turf. She ran good on turf. But the tipping point, the final thing where I said, I'm going to make her my best bet today, instead of just a pick, was that Manny Franco took her. Instead, when the obvious was to take, in a way, it was the 2, right? So anyway, I just thought that was an interesting little tidbit. And thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe to my channel. It's free. I'd really appreciate it. And lots of luck, and thanks for listening in.